This is such a cool story. Yeah, after this rookie hit the top 10 for the very first time in 1983, he was ready to take his place amongst the legends with his follow-up record. He created something that he wasn't really comfortable doing, writing a big stadium power ballad. He actually saw Bob Seger inspire a crowd doing one of his classics, and he was intrigued, believing from that he could write a great one himself. He worked up a demo. It was 10 minutes long. He sent it to Stevie Nicks. She actually wanted to work with him. He asked her to write some lyrics. She was so overwhelmed, thinking she'd ruin the song, she passed. Then when he finally finished this song, playing one of the best guitar solos of the decade, I might add, he was worried he might have ripped off another band's big single from the year before. So he actually called him up and asked him to listen to it. They were so mesmerized by him, they just told him to run with it. It became the power ballad of 1984 and one that would push him to the apex of all of music. Coming up next, through interview and story, the tale of a true classic. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. This is the only channel where we could go from John Denver to Iron Maiden in 2.5 seconds. We cover everything here. Every day we bring you exclusive stories straight from the artists, as well as music history essays that give you a behind-the-scenes look at the soundtrack of your life. Make sure to subscribe below right now. Do that right now. Click the bell so you can be part of this community. Also, take a look at our Patreon. We have a lot more content there, and that helps us keep this a daily channel. Our Vintage Years collection, you can click on that up here. I'm wearing the 1984, which is appropriate, because we're talking about one of the standout songs from the greatest year in music history, in my opinion. One that went all the way to number 2. Should have been a number 1 hit. So this is going to be an episode of number 1 in our hearts. We're going to induct it into the Professor of Rock Hall of Fame and king it number 1 all these years later. So let's go ahead and do it. We're going to immerse ourselves in Prince's signature composition. I'm talking about Purple Rain. This is one of those all-time head scratchers. I mean, Prince had 2 number 1 hits from this number 1 album. How did Purple Rain come up short? That's how great 1984 was. Actually, the song that kept Purple Rain at bay for 2 weeks at number 2 was Wake Me Up Before You Go Go by Wham. So the genesis of Purple Rain was conceived from a simple observation. While Prince was on tour during 82 and 83, he often crisscrossed paths with Bob Seger in arenas throughout America's heartland. One night, Prince asked his keyboardist Matt Fink why he thought the Detroit rocker had such massive appeal. Fink considered the question and he said that he felt it was Seger's powerhouse ballads like We've Got Tonight that kept his fans coming back for more. We've got tonight, babe. Matt Fink then suggested that Prince should try his hand at writing just that kind of anthem. He needed a song that would reach beyond the confines of his current fan base. Fink's exact quote, he said, "We were out on tour and Bob Seger was shadowing us wherever we went, and Prince said, I don't understand the appeal of that stuff. I said that it was like country rock. It was white music. You just need to write a white tune. You should write a ballad like Bob Seger writes. You'll cross right over." And he did. End of quote. As the story goes, Prince first debuted the chords of a new ballad to the band during a sound check at Cincinnati's Riverfront Coliseum. That was in December of 82. Revolution guitarist Wendy Melvoin remembers Prince coming in with this idea for a ballad. He knew where he wanted to go with it. He explained the tempo, picked a key, and everyone just started jamming until they came up with the opening chord sequence. And from there, it started to really come together. Although the chord progression was first played during that Cincinnati soundcheck, the song wouldn't evolve much until the summer of 1983. But as Purple Rain developed, Prince took Matt Fink's advice to heart. In Fink's opinion, the song could have been done by a country artist. Is very mainstream, Midwestern USA rock and roll. There's really no funk, no R&B, just straight up anthemic rock and roll. Prince was on the cusp of something quite phenomenal, something historic, something that would help propel him from a cult following at that point, an underdog, to a mainstream global rock star that could compete with anyone on this planet. Yet Prince recognized that this ballad shared some similarities with Journey's 1983 hit Faithfully. Faithfully. Concerned that his song might sound a little familiar, Prince actually called Journey's keyboardist Jonathan Cain. So here's what legendary guitarist and Journey founder Neil Schon told me about that very thing.
They were concerned because he had this song coming out that it was too close of chord changes to Faithfully. And if you listen to it now, you can hear similarities, but they are two different songs. And so, John listened to it, and he thought that it was a completely different song. He said, yeah, it's very similar, but I'm just grateful that you took the time to call me and actually asked if it was okay. So he said, go, He loved the song.
I mean, you could definitely hear similarities between Neil Schon and Prince's guitar parts. So Prince played an early version of Purple Rain over the phone, with Jonathan Cain just totally stunned. I love that Jonathan Cain told Prince just to run with it. That's how beloved and respected Prince is. As we further break down this iconic #1 hit, I do want to recognize our awesome sponsor, Zenni Eyewear. Right now, you can get a pair of glasses where you design the color, the shape, the size. You can even add blue blocks to protect your eyes from digital blue light, all for a small fraction of a concert ticket. Zenni's the real deal. Go check it out at zenni.com to order. So the connections between Purple Rain and Prince's contemporaries don't just end with Bob Seger and Journey. With the music in place, Prince turned to a new friend for help with the lyrics. No one other than rock and roll enchantress Stevie Nicks herself. And Nicks had actually reached out to Prince first. In a case of near instant karma, she called to tell Prince that one of his songs had inspired one of hers. She was working on a solo project, and while listening to Prince's Little Red Corvette, she had written a song called Stand Back. Love Stand Back. Such a great song. She wanted to give Prince a songwriting credit, and she even invited him to play on the session. Prince was, of course, in. Just an hour later, he showed up to record with Nicks. Stand Back became a big hit, reached #5 on the US Billboard Hot 100. After they finished, Stevie Nicks asked Prince if they could write together sometime. So he sent her a cassette with Purple Rain. It was still very much a work in progress. The track was wholly instrumental at that point, except for a little bit of singing. Prince encouraged her to write some lyrics. When Stevie Nicks listened to it, its monumental scope was just too much for her. It was a 10-minute ballad, and she felt overwhelmed. I listened to it, and I just got scared, Nicks said. I called him back, and I said, I can't do it. I wish I could. It's just too much for me. I've listened to this 100 times, but I wouldn't know where to even start. It's a movie. It's epic. But in retrospect, intending no disrespect to Nicks, I think we're all glad that she left it for Prince alone. She has actually said as much herself. Stevie Nicks is the queen, don't get me wrong, but I don't think anyone else could have turned Purple Rain into the world-class work of art that it has become. Clearly, Prince was very open to the influences and the inspiration of other artists. In fact, those who worked with him closely said that he obsessively read music and fashion magazines. He was always on the on the go, tracking anyone or anything else that the industry was doing or anybody who was tearing it up. He was always embracing the best of what was around and, incorporating it into his music, into his compositions. Prince drew from other bands from that era as well. The Cocteau Twins, they were a big influence. Roxy Music, Ultravox, Gary Newman. He would listen intently, study those artists, and strive to understand their rhythms. Prince even slept listening to these records only to wake up with them still playing. You can actually hear Gary Newman's style near the end of Purple Rain. There's a direct correlation to the last 30 seconds of Newman's song, I Die, You Die. Let's face it, Prince is a very mysterious guy. He could let people in if he wanted to, but typically he cloaked himself with a mystique and an intrigue that was as chic as it was maddening. His music, by extension, could be just as mystifying. For better or for worse, Prince rarely talked about what his songs meant. Wendy Melvoin said, it never came out of his mouth. In fact, Prince said that once his songs made it to a record, it was up to the listeners to make them what they want. He wasn't going to spoil the process by explaining what he thought that they were about. Now, fortunately, in the case of Purple Rain, Prince did give us a few meager clues to help us decipher and discover its true meaning. And it starts with his favorite color, purple. Purple Rain isn't the first time, of course, that Prince alluded to the color purple. Purple images had been really rattling around Prince's head in various guises for some time. For instance, on one of his early demos leaving for New York, he referenced Purple Lawn, and he wrote a song titled Purple Music as well. Historically, Purple Rain also seems to have an apocalyptic connection, as well as ties to heaven and hell. These are all themes that Prince addressed on his previous album with the title song 1999, which of course has a very end of time sort of feel to it. 1999 references Judgment Day, people running from destruction, war all around, the party of life coming to an end, as it were. I mean, nobody really thinks about 1999 that way because the music is so happy, so upbeat. But it was written nearly 2 decades before the arrival of the year 2000, which some people thought might be the end of the world. 1999 even says the sky was all purple as a backdrop to the chaos. The song is very much an antecedent to Purple Rain, which feels like a sequel since it seems to deal with the aftermath of the apocalypse. We actually do have Prince on record explaining Purple Rain, in typical brief and cryptic Prince fashion. He said, when there's blood in the sky, red and blue equal purple. Purple Rain pertains to the end of the world and being with the one you love and letting your faith and God guide you through. End of quote. Sounds a lot like heaven, hell, and the apocalypse are all wrapped into one and falling down all around us in the form of Purple Rain. I think Prince sees this as a redemptive event following on the heels of chaos. But the image of Purple Rain falling down feels like the introduction of a new dawn. And I think you can see that both in the context of Prince's music and in the shift his career was taking at the moment. Although Prince had never acted, he saw the film Purple Rain as an opportunity to showcase his musical brilliance and essentially break into global superstardom. The movie Purple Rain is a semi-autobiographical musical. It's a pop culture mainstay. In it, Prince plays the kid, an aspiring but troubled pop star from Minneapolis. Having grown up in a dysfunctional family, he fights to free himself from a cycle of domestic violence and a contentious relationship with his father. Music is, of course, his escape. The film's emotional climax hits hard when Prince performs Purple Rain in front of a captivated audience. Great performance. It goes without saying, but the film and soundtrack are really inseparable. Each thrives because of the other, really. I mean, the film brought the songs to life, but the film also owes its identity to the songs. Every track was vital. Purple Rain put every superstar and every critic's darling on notice at that moment. Michael Jackson had sat at the top of the charts with Thriller for most of the year before and well into the first part of 1984. He ruled everything. He just swept the Grammys. Nobody had ever seen anything like this. Well, Prince did the impossible. He actually toppled the king of pop. He had the #1 movie and the #1 album in the nation at the same time. He spent 24 weeks at #1 on the album charts and had 2 #1 hits from it. He was clearly in Michael Jackson's head all that summer. It doesn't matter. But as a kid, I remember loving both, but just being blown away that someone could even challenge a mantle that seemed improbable to take before that. I remember even hanging up my Michael Jackson jacket that I'd been wearing for months as an 8-year-old kid and then swapping it out with this purple windbreaker. I wanted to be like Prince, you know? With Purple Rain's release, Prince hit a commercial sweet spot. Though in its infancy, MTV was a growing juggernaut at that point and always hungry for content. And Prince played right into this. He created a movie that felt like a series of music videos. The film, the album, the singles all fed the beast, which in turn promoted Prince's music and an upcoming tour. I mean, as MTV got what it wanted, so did Prince. It was a rare moment in music history, one that would become a template for just about every rock and roll movie that followed, even movies that weren't rock and roll movies. They still followed the template. I mean, you think about it. Purple Rain, the album, sold 1.5 million copies in its first week on sale, and then another million over the next month. And the movie hadn't even been released yet. The soundtrack would go on to sell more than 13 million copies in the US. It was on September 26, 1984 that Purple Rain, the song, was released as the 3rd single from the soundtrack album. In the US, like I said, it reached #2 on the Billboard Hot 100. And it stayed there for 2 weeks. Internationally, though, it went to #1 in Belgium, France, the Netherlands, and Scotland. It also broke the top 5 in many other countries. In 2012, the Library of Congress added Purple Rain to the National Recording Registry, which, of course, they only accept recordings that they deem culturally, historically, or aesthetically important, or that reflect life in the United States. The influence of Purple Rain has rippled down through the generations, too. It's inspired a wealth of covers, including renditions by Tom Jones, David Gilmour in 1992, Leanne Rimes, Adam Levine, Train both did it, Bruce Springsteen, Dwight Yoakam, Beth Hart, featuring Steven Tyler and Jeff Beck in 2016. And there was Eric Clapton as well. And the aforementioned Neil Schon, founder and guitarist of Journey, did an incredible rendition of Purple Rain off his recent album, Universe. Prince also performed Purple Rain during the halftime show of Super Bowl 41. That was in 2007. And actually, he did it in a downpour. How's that for irony? With purple-hued lights shining all through the stadium, Prince performed his most iconic song in a rainstorm colored purple. Just amazing. Rain, purple rain, purple rain. I don't think anybody will ever top that halftime show. Not possible. Purple Rain was also Prince's closing track during his final full concert in Atlanta, Georgia on April 14th, 2016. It was just a week before he passed away. Following Prince's death in 2016, Purple Rain rose to #1 on the US and UK iTunes chart, allowing Purple Rain to re-enter the Billboard Hot 100, where it reached #4. Also re-entered the UK singles chart at #6, and it climbed all the way to #1 in France. It just shows you the power of this song, the power of this man. Purple Rain is both Prince's most iconic album and I think his most iconic song. Each was created and distributed during the most commercially and culturally dominant period of his career, and probably the most commercial period in music, popular music history. Greatest year in music, and he dominated it. Before Purple Rain, Prince was, lurking in the shadows, furiously working to make a name for himself and master his unique funk rock sound. But the era of Purple Rain set him well on his way to conquering the world. Earlier singles, When Doves Cry and Let's Go Crazy, that really opened the door for Prince. It was Purple Rain that slammed the door shut behind him. There was no going back after that. It became arguably his most definitive song, forever synonymous with his legacy. Prince performed it on practically every tour and almost every show, really for the rest of his 3-decade career after. In the end, he took Matt Fink's advice and he wrote a ballad. Only it ended up not just a ballad, but the ballad. Leave us a comment about Prince and his iconic power ballad, Purple Rain. What's your interpretation of this beautifully mysterious song? Let us know in the comments below. What are your memories of that summer when Purple Rain was taken over? Let us know as well. If you like this piece, watch our companion piece on When Doves Cry. You can check that out below. Make sure to subscribe so that you never miss out on our videos. And celebrate Prince with a 1984 Vintage Years collection shirt right here. You can get that at professorofrock.com. And also check us out on Patreon. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends. Talk soon.